Well, good morning and welcome to another day of Bible study here as we work through this Party On discussion, looking into the food in the Bible, looking into the feasting, the fasting, the fellowship, the festivals, and a lot of other fun places in the Bible. And over the last few days, we've been here in the book of Luke, where we've been following Jesus through a lot of dinner conversation and activities. And it is amazing, honestly, in how much Luke focuses on food and the table in his gospel. But it's also amazing how Jesus leverages that table environment in order to teach and sometimes even to push back against social customs. And that's what we've been seeing over the last few days. And in fact, here is another one, a hot button dinner conversation. All of this brought to you by Christ's Table. A thank you to every single person who is a participant in that ministry, and a special thanks to those who generously donate to make sure that we are continuing to be able to put ministry resources out there to lead in hybrid worship ministries and do all of the creative things that we're doing. And we've only just begun, honestly. The fall is going to be radically exciting as we implement a whole bunch of new things and we're excited about having you along for the ride. And there is still time for you to be a part of getting our June set of resources. For all of those who donate in June, we're going to send this out to you. This book is going to be a book study that we're going to walk through. We'll also use it as a foundation for walking through the Bible through our Sunday morning times together. We'll probably end up doing some podcasts and some video interviews as well over the weeks that this begins. And so you will find this in your mailbox sometime, probably the second or middle of the second week of of July, maybe even the middle of July, the third week of July, and then we will jump into this during the end of July and August as well. It's going to be a bit of a different month for us. We're going to change some rhythms. We're going to take a bit of a summer sabbatical and kind of take a little bit of a slower approach to the daily Bible studies and opportunity for us to do some other things. And if this is your first time with me over the last few days or weeks, you may be frustrated that I'm holding up the wrong side of the book. Well, I'm intentionally holding up the back side of the book because I want it to be a surprise. And if you donate to Christ's Table in the month of June, then we will send this out to you along with several other gifts and items and resources for you in the box that is being packaged together as we speak. And so it is about to go in the mail, and we're looking forward to sending it off to you. But we have a conversation that we need to have here in Luke chapter 14. And this is an awkward conversation. You know, it's amazing here. When we come to this passage, we find another day where Jesus is being invited into the home of a Pharisee. And you would think that at this point, the Pharisees would have gotten the hint to stop inviting Jesus over for meals, because whenever Jesus shows up for a meal, he just kind of calls it the way that he sees it, which I guess being God, Jesus is allowed to do. And so Jesus comes to this meal that he's about to be invited to, prepared to talk about the hot button issues of the day. And we find this at our table conversations as well, right? That whenever we invite people over, we end up talking about what's going on in the neighborhood, what's going on in the family, what's going on in the community. Gospels, they probably prefer that Jesus just keep his mouth shut. They would rather teach him a thing or two rather than him teach them a thing or two. And I think that still probably holds true even yet today, because we tend to be the type of people who would prefer that Jesus listen to us rather than to talk. So why don't we just go ahead and jump into this lengthy dinner conversation. One Sabbath day, Jesus went to eat dinner in the home of a leader of the Pharisees. So not just a Pharisee, but a leader of the Pharisees. This is a very important and prominent person who Jesus is sharing table fellowship with. And the people were watching him closely. There was a man there whose arms and legs were swollen. I wonder if he was a plant. Honestly, if they had intentionally invited him to be there to see what Jesus would do. So Jesus asked the Pharisees and the experts in the religious law, is it permitted in the law to heal people on the Sabbath day or not? They see where he's going at this because Jesus has continued to heal people on the Sabbath over their objections and has said that God allows the greater thing and the more important thing, that Sabbath was made for man rather than man being made for the Sabbath. So when they refuse to answer, Jesus just touches the sick man and he heals him anyway and sends him away. So he knows what they're thinking here. So he turns to them. The dinner hasn't even begun. He turns to them and he says, which of you doesn't work on the Sabbath? If your son or your cow falls into a pit, don't you rush to get him out? So Jesus is saying, y'all are hypocrites. You have made rules about what is work and what isn't work on the Sabbath, but ultimately everybody works in some way on the Sabbath, especially in a crisis or in an emergency. And somebody who needs help, who needs healing, somebody who in that moment needs a miracle and it can't wait until the next day, it's okay to work. But they couldn't answer because in so doing, they would have betrayed their beliefs and betrayed what they felt was right. And they didn't want Jesus to be able to win. So I love that line in the very beginning. In fact, let me put that up here. Verse 1, where it says that they were invited to the home of a leader and the Pharisees, and people were watching him closely. I love that. When people are watching you closely, don't waste your moment. It is time to shoot your shot. When people are watching you closely, don't waste the moment to school them. And Jesus never does. Jesus never wastes an opportunity to help people understand who God is, how his heart operates, and who his life and heart and love is most open for. When people are watching you closely, it's your chance. It's your chance. It's your chance, and don't waste the moment. Jesus knew that they were watching him here, and Jesus knew that by doing the right thing, it was going to end up causing them to act in a wrong and bad way, and he would end up, in a sense, paying for doing the right thing. It was entrapment. They wanted Jesus to heal this individual. They wanted him to break their rules. They wanted him to walk into this trap. But Jesus still does the right thing, even knowing what it's going to cause them to do. Hate him more and try to remove him, not just from power, but also to remove him from existence. But knowing this, Jesus still uses this as an opportunity to try to open their eyes to their ridiculousness. But the choice is theirs. So it's time for the dinner to begin now that this is over, but the fun isn't complete by far. Verse 7, whenever Jesus noticed that all who had come to the dinner were trying to sit in the seats of honor near the head of the table, he gave them this advice. When you're invited to a wedding feast, don't sit at the seat of honor. What if someone who's more distinguished than you has also been invited? And the host will come and say, give this person your seat. Then you're going to be embarrassed, and you will have to take whatever seat is left at the foot of the table. The greatest shall become the least in those situations. So instead, Jesus says, take the lowest place at the foot of the table. Then when your host sees you sitting there, he will come and say, friend, we have a better place for you. Then you will be honored in front of all of the other guests. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Jesus encourages us to be the kind of people who take the least desirable seat and the least desirable portion of food first. This requires us to be different kinds of people, because somebody who believes that they deserve the best seat or the best portion of food would never be able to be the kind of person who allowed somebody else to have something that they felt like was theirs. And so Jesus is calling them to change their hearts, to change their attitudes. And we could do this as well. It's not an easy jump for us to think about times where we have been in family meals with an extended family members present, or in the company of friends or co-workers, and we have either seen people who felt like they deserved the best seat and deserved the best food that was available at the potluck or at the spread, the catering. In order to take it, they do what they have to do to get it. And we have also seen those individuals who allow others to sit where they want to sit and eat what they want to eat. And no matter what their status is in the organization or in the family, they take what's there or take what's left. And if they happen to be first, they'll take the least. It engenders a great deal of honor and respect from others that is freely given rather than taken. Jesus has said over and again that God's kingdom really works in this way, that the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And so here on this earth, it's simply an opportunity for us to learn to be the kind of people whom we will be required to be in heaven. What are you doing? What are you doing taking the best? Thinking you're owed the best, leveraging your position for self-gain rather than leveraging your position for the good of others. This is really what Jesus is saying here is why don't you use that status? Why don't you use those things that you feel like you are owed or that you deserve or that have been placed upon you by others? Why don't you use that to help people rather than to help yourselves? So then he turns to his host after all of this excitement, and he says to the host, when you put on a luncheon or a banquet, don't invite your friends, brothers, relatives, and rich neighbors, for they'll invite you back, and that's going to be your only reward. Don't live in this I'll scratch your back if you'll scratch my back kind of world. Instead, why don't you invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, those who aren't getting invited to anybody's other banquets. And then at the resurrection of the righteous, God will reward you for inviting those who could not repay you. You see, you're taking the immediate reward of being seen as being somebody among the other supposed somebodies of the world. But the real somebodies of the world in God's eyes are those whom have nothing and those whom treat those whom have nothing like they have everything. Equality, equity. And God will reward you, Jesus says, for living in that way, for being magnanimous and giving in that way. Don't use the table to divide, Jesus is saying here. Use the table as a way to unite people. The Pharisees were masters at using the table to divide of people into social classes, into the haves and the have-nots, those who had worth and those who had absolutely no worth. And then they projected those things onto God, that God saw some people as being better than others, that God approved of some people more than others, that God loved some people more than others. And so they put people into boxes, ended up dividing people up as much as possible. Jesus says, use the table as an opportunity to unite people, to build bridges with people whom no one is building bridges to build bridges with people who are unlike you, who are different than you. Let those other people who you feel like you need to invite over for dinner so that they'll invite you over, or those people who invited you over for dinner, so now you've got to invite them over for dinner to return the favor. Stop living in a world that uses favors as a currency and start living in a world where everyone has favor. Now, I'm going to stop there, but I want to read one more verse. Hearing this, a man sitting at the table with Jesus exclaimed, "What a blessing it will be to attend." What? He doesn't say what a blessing it will be to get to heaven. He doesn't say what a blessing it's going to be on the other side. What a blessing it's going to be to not burn in flames in hell. No. What does he say? He says, what a blessing it will be to attend a banquet in the kingdom of God. What a blessing it will be to feast with God. He sees the kingdom of God as being a feast. This guy gets it. But there are a lot of other people around the table who don't yet get it. And the rest of the reading today, I'm going to let you do on your own, verses 16 through 24, because the fun has just gotten started at this meal. And Jesus is on a roll. Until tomorrow.